Welcome. Welcome to this episode of Grit, Grace, and Growth. I am your host, Laura Navaquin, and today we will be exploring the journey from stress to success with a very special guest, Luisa Molano. Luisa is a business coach, speaker, and author who in 2017 made a life-changing decision to leave the corporate world and follow her higher calling. Over the past 7 years, she's guided startups, founders, and entrepreneurs across more than 10 countries. Today, Luisa is passionately amplifying female entrepreneurs through her community, HERlocity, which provides mission-minded women with the resources and tools to follow their holistic journey to that first $100,000 of revenue, which we already know is the initial challenge. That is the biggest challenge. And thereafter, things get a little easier as we figure out processes, what works for us and what doesn't. So let's learn all about it and dive in with our conversation with Lou. All right, guys, I shared with you moments ago that I have a special guest today, Luisa Molano, who left the corporate world back in 2017 and went on to build her own endeavor. I have so many different questions to dive in with her, but first, I want to stop and thank you, Luisa, for joining me on this episode of Grit, Grace, and Growth. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, so let's dive in. First and foremost, would you be able to share with us a little bit more about your journey and what brought you to leaving corporate America and starting HERlocity?
Yeah, so my journey. I left the corporate world in 2017. I like to say that the universe was nudging me, and then it was kind of shoving me, and then it just pushed me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did consulting for the first few years, and then closed down my consulting practice and opened up my coaching practice 2 years in. And it was based on the realization that it's much more fulfilling to help people
Mm-hmm.
see where to look than it is to tell them what to do. And I do have a consulting hat that at times I still wear, but it is primarily coaching and helping people develop the inner and outer performance that creates a life that looks good and a life that feels good, because why not have both?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I know that we talked about also prior to this episode, but discussing ultimately um, from stress to success. And with that, what is your definition behind that of taking stress to success? Ultimately, we all have stress and how we deal with it, but what is your vision of that?
Yeah. So stress is a really interesting word. There's so much to unpack in it. And you put it perfectly. We all experience stress. And I think stress often gets a bad rap because there's good stress and there's bad stress. You can be doing a talk and be really excited about it and be really pumped. In March, when I went to launch my community, I did a talk to 50 female entrepreneurs. And my body, when I looked at my aura ring that night, showed me in a state of like constant stress, but I was so pumped and so excited. And there were some nerves, but it was good stress. I was like, this is me stepping out and really being visible in a way that I hadn't been before. And so I think it's important to know that stress is not something that we should necessarily avoid, but rather learn to work with. And when you can understand where the unuseful stress and where the useful or the helpful versus unhelpful stress stems from, and sometimes even if you can't find the root, just knowing when, okay, I'm stressed right now, and this is not helpful stress. Let me take a beat. Let me pause. Let me assess. Just slow down long enough to notice what's unfolding versus just keep running and racing. That practice over time is what moves the needle on actual success, because I often say that it's great to get to your first 100K in revenue. That is what my community exists. It's to fuel the journey to that first 100K. And yet, if you get to 100K, not in one piece, will you really feel successful? Like, is it really worth it if you don't get there in one piece? So it's
Yeah.
really about understanding stress, not making it the bad guy, and learning to work with it and give ourselves grace along the way, because being a human in 2024 is a full contact sport.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just resonating, taking in all that information. And that brings me to, would you be able to share with us one thing that can shift the nervous system from dysregulated to aligned and alive in any business situation? So like, how do we take that bad stress and make it good stress, or just reattach to it in a positive way?
Yeah. So I often think that I often talk about labeling stress as positive or negative is part of the
Mhm.
challenge, because inherently we want more positive, most humans, and we want less negative. So
Mhm.
by saying, okay, this is the positive, and I'm not throwing any shade on like positive psychology as a whole, and I'm not making this a generalization about positive psychology, but rather the awareness when we're talking about and working with stress and the energy that we have that is finite in a given day, saying, is this helpful?
Mhm.
Is this unhelpful? Changes the frequency of our state of being, our energy, and how we show up to the situation. Because if we see something as, to go back to the example of me doing my presentation in March to those 50 female entrepreneurs, some might have looked at that situation and said, you're stressed. That's a negative thing. You need to practice more. You need to do more breathing. Maybe if you had rehearsed the talk or had it more memorized or had walked the room before, then you wouldn't be as stressed. So it creates this series of ideas and thoughts that are evidence for why that situation isn't good when we say
Mhm.
it's negative versus positive. But if we say, okay, in this moment, versus a generalization about the whole situation, in this moment, what am I feeling? And when I did that, I said, okay, my mouth is a little dry. My heart is racing. I'm excited and also a little nervous. And I was able to see it in a much more neutral way. It's about
Mhm.
navigating with more neutrality versus these polar extremes that we often find ourselves in as humans.
Mhm.
And so when we say useful versus unuseful, and we look at a situation and we assess, and it can be as simple as, how do I feel mentally? How do I feel physically? How do I feel emotionally or energetically? Just 3 data points.
Mhm.
Mentally, a little nervous, a
Mhm.
little excited,
Mhm.
right? Like sometimes as simple as realizing that we can feel 2 things at the same time, and that's okay. We're like that epic as human beings that we can feel 2 things at the same time. And then how am I feeling physically? Oh, I'm feeling kind of relaxed. When I checked in with myself in March, I'm like, I feel kind of relaxed, but I'm also really like ready and pumped and a little nervous. And then emotionally confident. Like I really feel confident. And so breaking it down to the 3 attributes allows you to work with it very differently because it elevates self
Mhm.
awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so. I guess my understanding would be the first step is being able to decipher the difference of what type of stress it is. Is it a negative or a positive, a good or a bad type of stress that is, overcoming us? But then thereafter, once we are able to decipher what type of stress it is, would you then be able to give some practical tools or techniques that a business owner or, just an everyday person can use to regulate their nervous system in that situation?
Yeah, I was just working with a client on this. So, as an entrepreneur, and this is what every guest speaker inside of HERlocity, every piece of content, every video, every replay, every template, every document that comes to life in the community through one of the 10 programming pillars that we have, all are the crux of it, the ethos of it is what I call holistic entrepreneurship. And
Mm-hmm.
holistic entrepreneurship is on its own not a concept that I made up, right? It's there's a lot out there, but my unique lens on it and my work in the world around it, and specifically in HERlocity, is three things.
Mm-hmm.
I love doing things in threes, so you'll probably see me talk about a lot of things in threes. I've been drawing triangles since I was a little girl. Weird, serendipitous, who knows? So, three things. In any given situation, you can take out a piece of paper and maybe even do it right now if you're watching and there's something that you're like, if only I could work with this differently. If
Mm-hmm.
only I could work with this differently, it would make such a big deal in my business. It would make such a big deal in my mental health. It would make such a big deal in my ability to balance running my business and also being present for my family. You take out a piece of paper, you draw a triangle, and there's 3 points to the triangle: who, what, and how. Let's start with the what. The what is, what do you desire? What do you want? See in your mind for this situation. What is the desired outcome, the wish, the want, the aim, the goal? What are you moving towards? Right? That's the what.
Yeah.
Then the how is the strategy, the approach, the action, the technique, the how you envision making what happen.
Mm-hmm.
And typically 1 to 2 for that one. Your desire, we have to address one at a time, because that's
Yeah.
also part of the challenge is as
Yes.
humans, we try to take 5, 7, 10 steps at the same time. This morning I was doing something and then I started doing something else and then it led to something else. And I'm like, wait, time out.
Yes.
This doesn't need to happen today. What are you doing? Put it on the whiteboard. Put it in Asana. It doesn't have to happen. And so you back yourself up. What? What do you want? And oftentimes we go for what we think we can get, not what we really want. So what do you really want and desire? How? How do you want to go about making it happen? Not the problem that you perceive, but how would you love to see it happen? I want to be more visible in the world. I could do a podcast. That was your journey. You shared with me a little bit ago. So beautiful. That's one way to increase your visibility. You could become a speaker. You could write a book. You could do a TED Talk. How? What? How? And then who? And here's the juice. Who is the human doing the execution of the what, the execution of the how, and the designing of the what? Who? If I am a human that believes, and this is me, I endeavor as often as I can to see any situation that I perceive to be problematic as an opportunity, not a problem. And I have seen that every single time that I go, even if I have no idea how it's an opportunity, but I look at it and go, what if this were an opportunity? What if this were an opportunity and not a problem? And then I sit, like we sit in the question. And that can be really edgy. It takes a lot of courage as humans to sit in and with, I don't know. Like, we're so amazing as humans. We would rather make a beep-y decision than sit with, I don't know. Like, seriously, we would rather make a crappy decision oftentimes than to sit with, I actually don't know. But when we do, we always know. So sometimes asking the right question is the juice in and of itself in the who. Who am I?
Yeah.
Who is the human who wants to launch a podcast because I want to become more visible. Well, I'm a human who sees opportunities more than problems. I'm a human who believes that, and these are all my truths,
Mm-hmm.
my success, my business success is not a matter of if, it's a
Mm-hmm.
matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
And I list, it can be two, it can be three, or maybe one that you know brings you back down, anchored into yourself. And you can apply that in any situation, at any time, in any place, in space, on Mars, on Earth, at the yoga studio. Like if you've got something to write with, you could even do it on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Is what, how, and who.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. It takes me back to somewhat thinking or relating it to, I know different, but similar in this, in the aspect of, are you familiar? Have you read Atomic Habits by James Clear? I think is his name.
Great
Um,
book.
so he, of course, is talking about the habits, but one of the points he makes is that it's how you associate or the identity that you're uh, relating to. So not just the habits that you want to create, but by identifying with this. So I want to do A or B because I am this type of person. I am a runner. I am this. So that's how we'll run a marathon or whatever it may be by
Yes.
associating with it behind on the other way. Like anyways, so sorry to
No,
digress there, but
you
it
hit
made
the
me think
nail on the
about it
head.
in
That's
that.
perfect. I am dot
Mm-hmm.
dot dot is
Mm-hmm.
actually a perfect way to open up the who, because it can be a
Mm-hmm.
little abstract and like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? That's a little too whoa, Louisa, what are you talking about? I don't get it. Because it isn't very much it isn't about the logic. It's
Mm-hmm.
about this deeper wisdom, the more
Yeah.
nuanced metaphysical side of reality,
Mm-hmm.
which I think at some point the two meet anyway. You have
Mm-hmm.
science and you have spirituality, and they both say
Mm-hmm.
the same thing in different ways because all roads lead to Rome.
Yeah.
I digress. That's just my 2 cents.
No, I love that. I love that. All right. So great information. I want to ask you. So I know you've created HERlocity, which is an online community for mission minded female entrepreneurs. I hope I said that correctly, but that's what I've gathered. Um,
Yes.
my question for you is how does HERlocity support women in achieving both business success and as well personal well being? And also within that, so twofolded that question, and then what inspired you to focus on the intersection between strategy and soulful fulfillment, so being able to tie the two together.
Yeah. So you said, how does HERlocity empower business success and overall well-being
Yes. Mm-hmm.
first?
Yes.
So here's the thing. Let me give you a little bit some data points.
Mm-hmm.
In 2020, 3 million women left the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them, in conversations I've had, research I've done, articles I've read, and I'm actually exploring funding a nationwide study to
Mm-hmm.
further cement this. So it's not just Louisa said that she researched, but like, and here's the data.
Yes.
Um, 3 million women left the workforce. Many of them left either involuntarily or because they were like, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. I'm not happy. Like, I'm done. I can't do this again. And so because they left from a state of, just to stay in the vein of our conversation, of a state of unuseful stress,
Mm-hmm.
they ran from rather than towards. And so they stepped into entrepreneurship from a place called, I can't do that anymore. So I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're ambitious, driven go-getters, and they have a family and humans to sometimes provide for, even if it's a four-legged little guy and not a human, we've got something that we provide for. Sometimes it's just us and keeping a roof over our own head.
Yeah.
They start taking actions. They're like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to read this book. I'm going to go to this class. I'm going to do this. And they're cobbling their business. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what happens is when you don't have a foundation for your business set in concrete, an unshakable foundation built on purpose and vision, inevitably you're not building on concrete. So maybe you start to build a second story, just to use a skyscraper as an example. You build the first story and you're like, I'm going to build a second story and then a third story and then a fourth story. And then all of a sudden things start sliding and the foundation's slipping and things just aren't sound. Well, it's the same thing in business. It's not ultimately sustainable. And sometimes it takes a few years. And so what we're beginning to see is women whose mental health, whose well-being, and whose business is not sustainable because they've been doing it, by and large, the right things in the wrong order and the wrong things in the right order. And so it's demoralizing. They want to throw in the towel and they're like, I just don't think I'm cut out for this. And I call bull on that because I don't think that there's women that are not cut out for entrepreneurship. Why? Because entrepreneurship is the ultimate expression of freedom and purpose. What they're missing is the tools and a system that supports them to go, okay, start with your purpose and your vision. Let's pour the concrete. You were on a little bit of sand, not a big deal. Let's level it out.
Yeah.
Let's pack the dirt. Let's lay the foundation. Let's pour the concrete. And now let's build. And so that's where the 10 programming pillars of HERlocity come in, and they collectively move the needle on that journey to their first 100K. And I say their first 100K because what a woman needs to learn, a mission-minded entrepreneur, between here, and for those of you watching, I'm pointing to my third eye, my brain, and then here, and I'm pointing to my heart. What has to happen between our head and our heart along that journey to 100K changes the entire trajectory of our life. And then once we hit that milestone, getting to 2, 3, 4, 500K is not 2, 3, 4, 5 times the time and energy. And so really it's about HERlocity supports mission-minded female entrepreneurs with building that unshakable foundation that they can then build 2 stories. And maybe some women go, I'm okay. I've got a 2-story building. I'm great. Woohoo. Let's maybe put a little rooftop deck, put an umbrella, grow some flowers, boom. Then another woman goes, no, I want 3 stories. No, I want 4 stories. No, I want 5. I want to build a skyscraper. Yes, you do you, boo. But you have to have that foundation to then scale.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love that. So ultimately being able as well to build your business or build your endeavor on your purpose, whatever your a deeper purpose aside from what you see at eye level, if you will.
Yes.
But building it on that to build fulfillment within that. That's great. And so again, I know HERlocity is community based. How important is community in the entrepreneurial journey, especially for women, in your viewpoints?
Such a good question. Thank you for asking it. Such a good question, Laura. It is everything. And I paused because I'm like, are you really going to say this on the podcast right now? People are listening. You know, they've got their piece of paper. They stop curling their hair. They stop making the eggs and they're just listening. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're not. You're probably just still flipping the eggs, doing your hair, putting on your makeup, whatever it is you're doing, driving in the car. But it is, I do believe that it's everything. And I'll tell you from my perspective in my journey, what community has done for me. Especially for those who have been in the corporate world or some 9-to-5 component. What do you do when you work a 9-to-5? You wake up, you get ready. Let's say pre-2020, because 2020, post-2020, we'd get up, we'd get ready, and then we'd sit in our office at home. But by and large, you're plugged into pre or post-2020, a group of humans. You've got a marketing department, a finance department, you've got customer success, you've got technology, you've got finance, you've got HR, you've got, sales. You've got humans in functional roles aligned to their department, and you engage and you interact with them, and the company has goals and a mission, and you're hired, hopefully, in alignment with those values, and you guys are all rowing in hopefully a similar direction. And then you leave the corporate world and you go out to do your own thing. And you don't have weekly KPIs sent to you or reports from corporate social responsibility. You don't know, by and large, is anyone listening? This post only got 10 likes. My last post got 42 likes. Was it a bad post? Was it the time of day? Like, there's so many different ways to look at aspects of our business. And there's social, which serves, and I'm on social. I do the social game. I've learned to create very strong boundaries with social, and we have an amicable working relationship. We're not besties. We're like, we work well with each other. I've worked at my relationship with social for a long time. But by and large, social media kicks up for me to this day with the airtight boundaries that I have in place. Like, I don't open social media. So there's consuming social media and there's being a producer. I go into social media to produce content. I don't go onto social media to consume. And I have family that lives in other states, and it's, there's her story. When I do, I literally talk about atomic habits. I create a timer and I give myself 3 minutes. Timer, go. And I open up. And sometimes I realize that my watch goes off and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I was reading one post and I'm like, that's it. Because holistic psychologist is like one of my faves. And I'm like, how was that 3 minutes? I'm like, I guess that's your allotment for today or for this afternoon. And I close it.
Yes.
But by and large, like, I'm probably one of the most disciplined human beings I know. And it's still a challenge. Like, it takes so much discipline. By and large, though, we go onto social media and it's, well, look at her.
Yeah.
I'm talking about myself because I'm human, and sometimes I don't set the timer. Usually it's like Saturday mornings, and it's more like, well, it's Saturday morning, and I open it up and then I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been 15 minutes.
Yes.
And I check in with myself, right? Who, what, and how.
Yes.
And I'm going, oh, I literally feel less happy because I've compared myself to 7 women, 2 guys. There's this person's in Bora Bora. This one's like, and I'm like, wait, why? And so, walking it all the way back to your question, when you find a community of like-minded humans, I have seen there's less comparison and less competition because you share a common goal. Every woman inside of HERlocity has a mission in their heart for the world through their business, and they're on the journey to 100K. And so, can I say that like there's zero competition and comparison? No, because we're humans and it happens. But everyone knows that they're there together to learn with and from each other and to move their business forward to their first 100K. And then when you have conversations, we have a business accelerator inside of HERlocity. And so it's 25 women. We open enrollment for that twice a year. HERlocity funds 5 scholarships. And we meet every 2 weeks. We meet tomorrow, for example. And when one woman shares, I'll be coaching or having a conversation. We're going to be talking about purpose and vision alignment tomorrow. And I'm talking to her, the woman over here, and the woman over here goes, oh, I'm going through that. Wait, I thought I was the only one. And so there's this sense of belonging, of feeling seen, loved, and heard is what people tell me in HERlocity they feel in the community. I feel seen, I feel loved, I feel heard, I feel understood. And like, I'm not alone with some of the stuff that I'm struggling with and working on and working through in my business. And so we are a community on earth, whether we acknowledge it or not. We're one giant earth school community. And finding spaces and places where you have like-minded individuals around a shared mission and goal
Mhm.
is so good for the
Yeah.
soul. And when you have a curriculum and a structure like what HERlocity has in place, you get the success and you get the soul. You get the
Yeah.
structure and you get the experience and the vibe. And between the two,
Mhm.
we move the needle.
Yeah. That's great. I feel, everything that you said, and I feel that the topic of community and network, or the value of community and network alike, keep coming up in my life in recent conversations. So just the value of really having those strong networks and communities to have those conversations with like-minded individuals who support you, or and you can support them when needed, or just having those conversations, sometimes the vent with people that know or understand what you're going through, type of things,
Yeah.
especially in entrepreneurship, because it's its own animal, if you will, of something. But I also wanted to ask you, what would be one piece of advice, at least, that you would be able to give to aspiring female entrepreneurs, particularly who are just starting out and may feel overwhelmed or disconnected from uh, their intuition or inner strength, and they're trying to realign with that? What is one piece of advice that you would like to give them or can give them?
Oh, there's so many different directions I could take in your question, Laura. Two things. May I do two?
Yes.
Okay, cool. The first is working the muscles, because I see it as a muscle, of reaching out and connecting to other business owners. Because HERlocity is by women for women, but not all women only work with other women. So when I say
Mhm.
business owners, it's who is somebody, if you're just starting out, and as I say what I'm about to say, if you check in with yourself and you're like, no, I don't want to do that, then that means it's exactly the thing that
Yes.
you should do, right? Like, it's entrepreneurship is a holistic journey. That's why I talk about holistic entrepreneurship so much.
Mhm.
It is mind, it is body, it is
Mhm.
spirit. I've never taken better care of my body, my mind, and my spirit since going into business for myself, because I see that the more diligent and self-aware I am to take care of my needs mentally, physically, and emotionally and energetically, the more I'm able to produce and create, and the more brave,
Yeah.
the more courage that I have, and the more my nervous system feels supported to take those brave steps. So if you're just starting out, the one thing that I would go back and tell myself to do is reach out and connect with others.
Mhm.
And you might think, okay, well, great, I could do that. I
Yeah.
see the value in reaching out and working the muscle called connect with others. But where do I freaking start? Right?
Mhm.
That's always the question, is the how, especially if we haven't done it before. It's also a great way, BTW, that our ego keeps us playing small, is by going, how? And then we think we need to figure it out. And then we're like, oh, well, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do that. And we're not really taking the action. Anyway, I digress. Ego sneaky. Um, but find somebody on LinkedIn. Go to LinkedIn. Don't like LinkedIn? Go to Facebook. Entrepreneurs are everywhere. Don't like Facebook? I'm more of an Instagram person. Entreprenista is a great community. That's how you and I met, Laura, or even HERlocity. And literally go to members and scroll through. There's bios, there's people's links in any platform. You
Mhm.
can literally get a sense energetically of a person when you scroll through their information. Does what they're up to light you up?
Mhm.
Best case scenario, it's somebody you can reach out to. Worst case scenario, you're putting yourself out there. It doesn't feel like it is, but you are, because you're going, what if I could connect with this person? And
Yeah.
again, therein lies the who. Who are you being in this moment? Well, I'm being someone who's curious, someone who might want to connect with a new entrepreneur. And then comes the ego. But what if they don't like you? But what if they reject you? But what if they don't respond? Or even worse, they won't respond. They won't like you. You're just starting out. Look how far along they are. And you just got to know that that little voice, its job is to keep you where you are.
Yeah.
Homeostasis. That's it. Ego's not evil. Ego's not bad. It's just trying to survive. And the way it survives is by keeping us stagnant.
Mhm.
And we know one grows in stagnation. Literally, nothing grows in stagnation. We have to take action in order to have results. The only way to have results on earth is to take action. And so if you find someone and you go, ooh, okay, one person, not a list of 25. I worked with the coach, was like, come up with a list of 50 people you could reach out to. My nervous system was like, what the beep is that about? One, three, one human that you would be like, whoa, if I could connect with this person, this would be dope.
Yes.
And then you reach out to them. You can use ChatGPT to help you come up with an email. There's a number of different ways. ChatGPT is probably the easiest when it comes to composing content. Claude's also pretty good at creative writing. It's not even creative writing. It's just like a hello email or DM. And when you do, here's the secret sauce. I call this the connection triangle. You go me, you, me, and we. When you send that note to them, what do you want them to know about you? What do you want them to know that you know about them? Something they posted on LinkedIn. Hey, Laura, oh my gosh, I just heard you recently launched a podcast episode. And in the first 2 weeks, you recorded a ton. And you've got this strategy for making a difference in people's lives and growing your businesses even more. That is so cool. I actually love being on podcasts. I don't have a podcast yet, blah, blah, blah. Would you be open at some point, maybe to connect and explore synergies? Exchange ideas. I'm on podcasts. You're a podcast host. Maybe we could collab, or at a minimum, just share ideas that help each of us move ourselves forward. You see how there's a little you, there's a little me, and there's a little we.
Yeah,
it's
that's
sticky.
great.
That's what it is. It's super sticky. I went a little longer on that, so maybe I'll pause there because I could say the other one, but I really unpacked that one, so maybe that's where I'll stop.
Oh, such great information overall. I think ultimately everyone should stop and give you a follow. So I want to give the floor back to you one last time to share with listeners where they can find you, because I know that there is so much more information that they can gather from yourself, and it's worth reaching out to you.
Thank you. So I'll start with HERlocity. HERlocity is HERlocity. So it's a play on words between her and velocity. The link will be in the show notes. That's the first place to start. If you are like, I want to get to 100K and I don't want to do it alone. I know that I can, but I don't want to do it alone. And I love the idea of being supported by and growing with and learning from other mission-minded female entrepreneurs. There's that. Then Instagram. That's probably where there's the funnest blend of my personal and my professional. HERlocity doesn't have its own Instagram page, so it's just luisamolano.tgob. But there's so few Luisa Molanos. If you type in LuisaMolano, it's like there's very few people, and it's me holding my hands up in like doing heart-shaped hands with the purple background. It's sort of like, you can't miss me. That's probably the second place. A little bit more of a professional polish is LinkedIn, luisamolano.tgf/ LinkedIn, Luisa Molano TGOB. And then I'm also on Facebook, but I feel like Facebook's like, I'm the redheaded stepchild, where like I do post some things, but it's definitely not my fave. But we play in the sandbox also. You can find me on any one of those. And I'm sure that Laura will link all of those in the show notes.
Of course. Those will all be linked below in the show notes. So you'll have absolutely no problem finding Luisa. But thank you, Luisa, for taking the time to join me on this episode. So much great information. Thank you for joining me.
I appreciate you having me. I hope this was valuable, you guys.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Thanks so much. I want to thank Luisa for joining us today on this episode of Grit, Grace, and Growth, and for sharing her wisdom and insights with us. It truly is inspiring to hear about the intersection between strategic business growth and soulful living. So finding that deeper purpose. And for our listeners who want to learn more about Luisa's work and or join her community with HERlocity, check out the links below in the show notes. Remember, aligning your nervous system isn't just about reducing the stress. It's about identifying the type of stress and about unlocking your fullest potential in both business and life. So until next time, keep growing with grit and grace.